So I'm here with Kate and Debbie, coming from different locations. Now, Debbie, you're in San Francisco. Kate, where are you?
I'm in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh God, two of my favorite places. You guys are roughing it out, aren't you? San
We
Fran and
are
Boulder.
big time. It's I just feel so lucky to get to live here, honestly.
It's beautiful there. So,
Yeah.
what? I know we're going to talk about your book. We got a lot to get to, but let's take a step back. And what's the connection between you two? How long have you guys known each other and collaborated?
I I started to, I actually helped to create a training that we were piloting, and Debbie was one of the participants. And then I was like, I want to get to know that person, and I want to help her in her organization. She was working for Mozilla at the time, and so she became a client. We became collaborators, and that was back in 2010 or 2011.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, Debbie, you were actually a participant in that class. Do you remember this?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Like it was yesterday. It was a life changer.
So, what was the topic? Can I ask? What was that one
Y-
about?
Yeah, it was the founder of CTI, Henry Kimseyhouse, who's a big mentor of ours, had put together this training called I Am Typing. And it basically was a way for you to understand who you are as your most compelling and the impact that you can create, perhaps intended or unintended, so that you just become more conscious of it.
Hmm.
And and I had been through coaches training, and one of the women in my cohort says, "Hey, this mentor of mine is leading this training. Let's go do it together. It'll be fun." And I thought, what the heck? I'm going to have to design a leadership development program for Mozilla. And so let me go see if this is something that makes sense to bring into the organization. And that was the beginning. I got typed. I know who I am when I'm my most compelling, and the intended and perhaps unintended impacts of me as my most compelling self.
And then we brought that training into Mozilla. We typed over 200 people. It's the most, at least it was at the time.
Whoa, there they go. That's Blue Angels, folks. That's Blue Angels flying
People,
over Debbie's house.
it
Oh
is
my
Fleet
God.
Week in San Francisco, and I happen to live at the top of one of the highest hills, so they are
Right
they're
there.
circling the tower, as they say.
That was pretty
That's so
awesome.
funny.
Yeah,
That was
they're
awesome.
buzzing the tower.
Yeah, that's it, buzzing the tower. Sorry
So,
about that.
no, that's all right. I mean, I love a good Top Gun reference. But so you guys hit it off. You came up with this training, and now 10 years later, you have a book. And if I'm under, let me understand right. Humanity Works Better is the title. Five practices to lead with awareness, choice, and the courage to change. Now, it has it dropped officially yet? I saw on Amazon it said October 26th. Is that right?
October 26th, yeah, that's when it sort of is available to most people a little bit later in Europe, but here in the US, it should be ready to, it should be at your doorstep. If you're pre ordered it, it should be at your doorstep on October 26th.
So Kate strategically has a copy of the book in the background right now, like any good author would do. It's sitting there, and now Debbie is doing likewise. There it is. Now, first book for both of you guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Never thought I'd write a book, but
That's right.
voila.
You know
That's
what?
right.
As somebody who's kind of had many false starts for it, I know it. You got to do it. It's a discipline and a commitment. And congratulations to both of you because that is a huge bucket list item for a lot of people.
We were talking about this with some other friends and colleagues of ours. What's really fascinating about this process is how much I felt pulled by the work. So it wasn't just like an ego thing. I want to write a book. It had more to do with the fact that we've been doing this work for the past 10 or really 15 years in
Mm-hmm.
organizations, and we've seen it work. And there is something about we want to make it available to more people because we really do want more people to be doing these things in their organizations, you know.
Well,
For us,
it's
it's a scale piece and a foundational piece to the bigger work that our company, which, it felt like, to Kate's points, if we're going to change the world of work, we have to reach everybody. And we can't do that with Kate and I plucking around in trainings, in
right.
certain kinds of environments. So the book is the foundational piece. Other pieces of our ecosystem is we're working with an instructional designer. So content in the book deepens so you can go through it as an intact team, as an individual, a book group could go through it. We're hoping it'll reach high schools and NGOs and, folks who are just, I want the corner barista to be able to have a place where humanity works. So it had to be accessible and reachable to everybody. Um, and then we have our intact programs that we go into companies and deliver. And then we're hoping the last punctuation point in our ecosystem will be a certification that companies can be
Very cool.
certified as a place where humanity works. So when the marketplace for talent is looking for places that they can not just contribute the best of themselves, but they can do it in a way that brings out the best of themselves. That's our hope.
Well, they say if you want to write a book that's successful, you find a gap, find an area where there isn't something really addressing that. So, what was it that you guys said, "Hey, there's something missing here"?
For us, it is the problem that we set up in the book, which is productivity is in fact about people. And I think we talk about productivity out there as though it has nothing to do with people. It's a process. It's something that you measure, and we sort of forget that there are people that make the world go around. And yeah,
We
you
kind of
know.
tell that we tell the story in the problem statement chapter of the book that, for the last 30 years, companies started first looking at efficiency. How do we get better and faster at what we do? And so we did that. We did it. We've all been through that process re-engineering phase that happened in the, 30, about 25, 30 years ago. And then organizations are like, okay, well, we've efficiencyed ourselves to death. Oh, but now we still need to hit good profit margins. So now we need fewer people to do more work. And what that's really left is a burnt out, disenfranchised, unhealthy workforce and workplace. And so Kate and I are like, the conversations that we go in and watch with trainings is there are going to be roadblocks in
Mm-hmm.
doing your work, right? When people come together to work together, especially when resources are scarce, all kinds of conflict comes up. Some of it inside yourself, some of it embedded systemically into how work is getting done. And the thing that you can control is you in that. And so we're like, boy, what if we taught some basic skills to people on how to navigate the inevitable roadblocks that come up when you put humans together to do great things under hard circumstances. Let's do
Well,
that.
and one of the other issues that I think that we deal with in the book, that we've seen, is that when you get groups of people together, like Deb was just talking about, that it becomes very easy for them to deflect the problem over there. Well, if my boss was just better, or if my
Mm-hmm.
manager didn't do this thing.
Leadership
And
is the problem.
yeah, and then part of what we end up doing is it's very easy to deflect that problem over there. And one of the core tenets of this book is that you are at the center of it. We can't do anything about quote unquote them. The only thing you have control over is you. And what do you want to do about it? And so every single one of our practices is focused on you. And what can you do to create safety? What can you do when working together? I mean, we literally sort of look at that because that is very much our belief that, this comes back to Henry Kimsey House. I remember talking to him at one point and him saying, I was like, can we really go in and change organizations? This was 20 years ago. And he said, I don't think we can change an organization, but we can change you and you and you.
And one of the things that I worked on, especially inside organizations, is I look for where the high leverage point is. Where is there pain inside the organization that if we begin to shift that level, it creates this sort of seismic movement inside the organization? And so our programs are designed at high leverage places, leadership, emerging leaders, managers. But this book, while it will sit on bookshelves throughout the world starting October 26th, um, it'll sit in the leadership section of a book, but it is about the leader in each and every person. Yes, if you are the leader of a CEO, but if you are an individual contributor and you don't like how something is happening, there are some things that you could do. You can start to do differently. And if at the end of you trying to do your best, it just isn't being reciprocated in that organization, then you can move on. Otherwise, we just wrote an article called Your Baggage Has Wheels. You're just going to keep pulling that with you to the next place and looking for somebody else to solve your, to make your world better. It's got to start with you.
Well, and were you guys already working on this book before COVID?
We were.
Yeah.
We had actually. I was sort of feeling like it was time for us to try to cull 10 years of learning and leading, into a book, because I was like, more people need to have this out there. And so we had started to work on an outline, I think in December, January, right?
Wow.
2019, 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the things that got us through COVID, was because my work just dried up, and I luckily had something to do, and lots of time to do it. So the bulk of this book got written really in the first 6 months of 2020.
It was a really interesting time to write on the topic that we're so passionate about, because not only was everybody in the world affected by what happened with the pandemic and COVID-19, and we wrote a whole series of articles that are available off our website about like navigating the era of COVID-19 with humanity, and noticing what's happening for yourself and what you're trying to make meaning of out of this time. Um, and we also were in a very interesting political climate in the United States. And you were seeing so much of humanity playing out in sort of the best of itself and not the best of itself. And so the timing of our book, um, like we couldn't have asked for a better receptivity for it, because I think there's just a lot of people trying to figure out what the reset is for themselves
Yeah,
and
it's
their
like you
life.
identified a problem. That problem got on steroids all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
totally.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty amazing because you look at some of the you said Kate, you mentioned how at one point you asked, can you change an organization, and you can't really. And I think we all, if we're old enough, and I'm going to assume, I know you ladies are both in your 30s, but I'm a little older. We're all old enough to remember like 2008, 2009 when we had the recession as well. And companies at that point, I think that was when they showed a lot of people that they don't love you. Okay, you're an
Mm-hmm.
employee because you're a commodity in a lot of cases, and a lot of people had to grow up and decide what you're saying. What can you control? You can control you. You can control it, and if you're miserable somewhere, you can leave. You have the ability to do that. But you can also control how you handle your world every day. But now it's like you guys just, what was the content you just shared? Something that one of your articles just got posted in Harvard Business Review about, and this is the buzz term now, the Great Resignation, right?
Yeah.
Golly, I mean, you better have your employees in a good place right now.
Yeah.
What motivated that article?
It's very much in line. The title of the article is "With so many people quitting, don't overlook those who stay." And it's one of the things, I'll let Deb jump in here in just a sec, but it's one of those things that um, things are changing massively because of COVID. I think it was a pause for a lot of us to reevaluate work and life and that balance or lack thereof, and where we live and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. And I think that we don't know how this is gonna turn out. We don't know yet. And there is right now, there's just this huge buzz out there about this great resignation and everybody leaving. And this is very much in line with our brand of, and you have people who are committed to you, and everyone's sort of following the squirrel that's just jumped up onto the fence. And it's something we feel pretty passionate about, is there are people in your organization who are currently there now, and not to over rotate on all those people that are leaving.
Yeah, one of the things y'all might not know about Kate and I is, Kate has been a master coach for a really long time, and I came into coaching maybe 10 years ago. Um, but my background is both in human development and organizational behavior. And my last 2.5 decades have been inside as a senior, as a CHRO inside several organizations. So I did a lot of those layoffs in
Mm-hmm.
2008, where we were really trying to help people understand the power of being a T-shaped individual, because it gives you more resiliency in those times when organizations are looking for lean people who can cross over into different functions and be the carriers of a culture that's changing, not by anybody's wish. Um, and so as we sat out to write a series of articles, which we've been doing actually for about a year and a half now, um, one of the
Incoming.
here comes again
Here
buzzing the
Incoming.
goes.
tower. It's sort of on point for my topic here. Like, we're buzzing the tower here a
This,
little bit with this
this is
article.
awesome.
You know, chief instigator officer, that's my brand here, is like how I am the disruptive thinker. I'm the one that says, why do we pay attention to this and not that inside organizations? When I went in to lead HR functions, not coming out of HR, I questioned everything. Is
Hmm.
this adding value? Are we doing the right thing? How do you create value in an organization? And what I was so taken with in the freneticness of the Great Resignation was everybody's panic about needing new people. And Kate and I have a mindset in the book called outcome creating. And it became very obvious watching behaviors around this frenetic response to needing to hire, that the people you were forgetting about the most are the people who are there. And the best way to stabilize an organization is to stem your turnover.
Hmm.
And so pay attention, people, to the people who are there. Honor those people, treat them as humans, not as resources, and cultivate them, because then they will tell people who are looking, this is the place you want to be. One of our clients we're working with right now, to this point, has 94% retention in
Wow.
a market where most companies are looking at 25 to 30% turnover right now. So there's something to be said for treating your people like humans and giving them the recognition, the development, engaging them in helping, stabilize your organization so you become attractive to new people and business can continue to win. We always are looking at the both and here. How do both individuals and the organization thrive? And this is a place I think we were both very passionate about. It just popped up in my feed again on HBR on leadership. It has had so much of an overwhelming response. They've got it at the top of their um, letter in big bold letters, where all the other articles are smaller. So it's resonating out there with a big audience.
Well, and you would think it'd be common sense, but it's not. And I
No.
and I think that you got to get employees off the spreadsheet and remember it's an investment. It takes it's a pretty simple calculation to realize how much money you're losing by letting them walk. And like you guys are saying, the whole gist of this is the people who are left behind, they're picking it up. They're picking up the work, and pretty soon, I know you guys mentioned burnout, and I mean that's a real thing. Burnout is a very real thing, especially if you think about the emotional stress people have been under the last almost 2 years.
Totally.
It's just think about I was thinking about this because I was CHRO for a company. I was out in Florida, and then in the middle of the pandemic, had to find another opportunity back here in Texas because commuting back and forth from Texas to Florida just wasn't going to work. So I was with two companies during the pandemic, got a good look at it, and you look where everybody's furloughed and everybody's freaking out. I mean, it's such a weird time. And, oh my God! But except for the essential workers, and the essential workers go through this. I mean, and right now, my company, healthcare workers, we have frontline anesthesiologists. We have people who are still out there. We have people who've seen the people in the hallways stacked up and trying to get a room. I mean, what they went through, and then we come to where those same people now, some of they're being pushed out of their jobs, and I don't know if some of the reasons that people are leaving, but some of the numbers, and I just wrote down a few in your article about how many people have resigned just in the what is it last quarter, April through
11,
June, like
11.5 million.
11.5 million people
Hmm.
have resigned. Um, there's 10.5 million job openings,
Hmm.
and and I'm not sure, I didn't write down your sources, so you guys might even be able to fill me in, but 40% of the workers are considering a change. That's pretty, that's pretty shocking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, all the sources are linked in the article. So, folks, when they go there, you can see the source links behind them. It was interesting. Steve Cadigan, who's a friend of ours, just wrote the book Workquake. And he just posted on LinkedIn today a picture from, Kate, where did I tell you? Steamboat Springs or
Steamboat
someplace in
Springs. Yep.
color. And there was a big sign that just said, hey, folks, we're closed because we don't have enough people to work. And our community actually is at risk. This place is like the hub of our community. And we're afraid. We're afraid for what this is going to create as a ripple effect in our community. So we're sorry we're closed, but help us, like, help us. And it is, I think in particular some of the service industries that are trying to rebuild are a place. I responded to Steve's article, like, I can't fix the politics and the economics of this situation, but boy, oh boy, let me tell you, when I ate out the other night, we topped up the tip for our
Hmm.
service person, and we let them know how grateful we are that they were showing up, and that it really, I know it was a sacrifice for them, and it's certainly made a difference for us. Like, that's the one thing I can do, is acknowledge, which is a skill we have in the book, acknowledge other people for the contributions that they're making and the impact that that has on me, so that they feel seen and appreciated and acknowledged for their contributions.
Well, I wrote down a quote. I actually wrote down one for each of you. And Debbie, you mentioned this a minute ago, and I probably should have used it then, but about fear leads to judgment, certainty limits us, curiosity is the key that opens possibilities. And I think the first part of that now, fear leads to judgment. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that right now. There's so much of it. And so people, it sounds like in Steamboat Springs, that's really that could impact the whole community. But the fear is what is driving it.
Yeah. Well, and part of what in the work Kate and I do with coaching and moving teams and organizations forward, fear is so often rooted in resistance. It shows up as resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand what the resistance is about, it almost always is rooted in fear of something. And then once you understand that fear, you can help people navigate what of that is true and what is that as a perception, and being curious about, you know, I don't know what's happening in Steamboat Springs, but being curious about how do we build and keep our community given our certain circumstances. Because that was really what I took out of that message board that Steve shared. Our community is at risk here, so
Mm-hmm.
help us. What can we do to form and build community in a way that feels safe and meaningful, um, and and takes us back to outcome creating, to where we want to go, because today is not where we want to stay.
No.
Well, and one of the things we write about in the book is that the antidote to judgment is curiosity. And so when you find yourself in that place of being super judgmental about someone or something, the way to get yourself out of that is to just get curious about what's happening over there. And I think that's one of those things that right now, on a pretty meta level,
Yeah.
we could all do with a dose of just getting curious about people who see the world and experience the world and have opinions about the world that are really different than our own. And we might learn something, you know?
We talk in the book about perspective, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so often we each think that our perspective is the truth. And when you're curious about another person's perspective, it broadens our understanding, maybe our acceptance, maybe our tolerance of what's happening out here, when you hear and can appreciate that there are other angles to a story or to a challenge or to an opportunity that maybe you haven't just considered.
Well, and Kate, a quote I wrote down for you is that, which I thought was great. It's pretty succinct. Is I inspire people to be good humans in the workplace. What does it mean to be a good human in the workplace?
Oh, that's a good one. What it means to be a good human in the workplace, I think, is to be curious about the people around you. What do they think? What do they see? We talk about this, and Deb just made a reference to it, which is when you're in an organization, you're at a certain level as a manager or a leader, and you're only seeing part of the picture. Your perspective is somewhat clipped because you have a lot going on, but you've hired people underneath you to do some of the hands-on stuff that you just literally don't have the time to do.
Hmm.
And so being able to sort of get curious about when you're dealing with a problem that you don't really know about, to get curious with them and what are they seeing? What do they see that's different than yours? And being, it's my favorite chapter of the book, Dare Not to Know. It's my favorite chapter of the book. And it has a lot to do with that willingness to admit that you don't know everything. Sounds common sense. You said that just a second ago. Like, so much of what we write about is common sense. It's not rocket science. It's very accessible to most people, I believe. And so there's something about, when you can admit, I don't know how to deal with this problem. And
Hmm.
you yourself have hired other people to help you solve that problem. Get curious as to what they see. And there is an act of surrender that happens in this practice. And I think it's probably one of those countercultural things, I think, in terms of when we think of leadership, we think we have to know everything, and if we don't know, we're going to make it up and we're going to pretend. And it's one of the ones that I love because it sort of turns it on its head. And if you can actually stand up there and pretend that you don't know everything and ask people what they think, that is actually going to increase their engagement. They're going to step towards you. But our fear is they're going to judge us.
I saw this. It's kind of funny you said that. It just jumped in my head
Yeah.
as you were talking in the HR community. And Debbie, you might still be in some of these groups as well, but there's these Facebook groups that for peers in different industries. And I saw more of this during COVID, where people reaching out to their community, asking, "What are you guys doing? How are you
Yes.
doing it? Has anybody got any ideas?" I don't remember ever seeing it being that much of an outreach. It was usually more of opinion statements or sharing content. It was literally people crowd sharing. Different tools
Totally.
they created. It was pretty neat. The HR community, I think, and I say this all the time. It's in the leader to the podcast. This was our leadership moment. I mean, we were there. The humans were our job, and none of us knew what the heck to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that just on the humanity component, when Kate and I got ready to name our company, which is called Humanity Works, we're like, let's pause here for a minute. What do we think we mean by humanity, right? And one of the things that we had to go look up, what does it mean? This is how I work. What does it mean? What's the technical? What does Webster say about what humanity is, right? And then what do we want to say about it? It was totally how we work. Um, and and one of the things that sort of struck me and us and is sort of tied tightly into our work is this idea that humanity at its root is about the intersection of people. It's how we work and come together. And you mentioned it about the HR community, right? There was humanity coming there because nobody knew the answers and we needed each other. We don't get out of this world without being interdependent on other people. It doesn't happen in the workplace. It does not happen in our lives. It is part of how communities are formed and shaped. There is an interdependency and a need that we have with each other. And yet, you get to be given birth to by a human, and that human gets to take you home with no playbook on how to what's so funny, people are like, these are such common sense skills. And we're like, yeah, but where do you learn them? Who teaches them to you? Our assumptions is that everybody has them. And oh, by the way, that they think of them exactly like I do. And so the book offers, through our practices, 5 very fundamental, very accessible skills, like how to listen. And not active listening, but that there are actually 3 levels of listening and information in each. And when you understand how to listen in that way, more information is available to you that you can then buzz in the tower, move and act on in a way that gives you meaning. Another practice of ours is curiosity, which is like how to gather and garner more input so you can kind of put down some old stories about yourself, about other people, and step more tightly into a relationship. Acknowledgement is another one of those skills. So you can see these are not like PhD, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to like grab hold of basic skills. And we were like, let's just start with five. And if the world starts doing these five, let's see what happens. Like, let's
Because
just
we
see what
think those
happens.
5 skills are actually going to help you be a better human being. And if you're a better human being, you're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel more fulfilled in your work and working with the people around you. I think
And more
there's a,
effective navigating those roadblocks that
yeah,
come up because
yeah,
people are messy. We got all kind, as HR
Yeah.
people will know, people are messy,
yeah.
right? But when you approach that mess with certain mindsets and skills in your toolbox, there's a lot that we could do as humans to navigate our way through those roadblocks together instead of chewing, instead of being harmful to each other.
Well, and you look at some of the hardships this pandemic threw in our way too. We were sent everybody home, and then so we become a virtual type, virtual meetings. We become virtual interaction. But I know that most of the calls, say 80% of the calls I'm on, nobody turns on their camera, which is so you're speaking to black boxes.
Mm.
People are multitasking. So you mentioned listening. That's why I chuckled as soon as you said listening. There's a lot of those. Debbie, can I get your opinion? They're like, oh, I'm sorry. What was the question? Because they haven't been listening. People are doing whatever else they have to do. They're doing their busy work. We're secluded. We're isolated. We're siloed. Then in a broader picture, you see some of the divisions that are happening politically and everything else, where we're sniping at each other and everything. And when you're talking about humanity being that intersection of us with other humans, man, that's powerful because when we start getting in these silos, we're literally losing our humanity, and you can see it everywhere. And it's a really sad, shameful thing that but all we can do is control ourselves, right? So you start with you, and you hope that you can bring a few others along. But it's a pretty. I mean, your timing could not have been better. I mean, what a topic.
Yeah.
What a topic. Humanity. Yeah.
And,
Okay.
Yeah, let's go
let's
there.
talk about that,
Let's do it.
people, and how to bring it into our companies.
Well, and it's I love where you're sort of pointing, and I'm going to use that as an example, in the sense that if you're on a call with a bunch of people and they've all got their screens turned off, you could request, "Hey, listen, for the next 15 minutes, let's turn our screens on so we can see each other and see how we're reacting and responding, because that will just make us all feel a little bit more sort of connected." That is something that you could take a stand for. We do in our
Mm-hmm.
trainings when we're with people. And I understand that it's a real thing, the Zoom fatigue that happens.
Yeah.
And I get it. It is a real thing. And yet I also think you're right. That's one of those things where our humanity gets, literally turned off, when we can't see each other.
I'll just sort of play even out more for what Kate's saying. Level three listening is environmental listening. It's like what you feel in the air that's not being said.
Hmm.
And so, what a powerful moment to be on a Zoom call with black screens and say, hey, folks, before we dive into today's agenda, I'm worried about everybody.
Hmm.
How you doing out there? Because it just feels like we're just all staring at dark screens, and I miss you. Like, can we just hop on and connect for a few minutes?
That is
That's
powerful.
humanity at work.
And you know what? There's some people that I join some of these operational calls just so I can be there for HR counsel on occasion. And there's people I've been with my company now 16 months or 15 months, something like that. Never seen their face.
Yeah.
Never. They could walk in the office tomorrow and I would not know who the heck they were.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What would it be like to say, I miss you? I really miss you all.
Yeah.
And so could we just all turn on our screens and find a way to connect with each other as humans for just a few minutes? That is humanity at work. And
And
anybody can do
it's
that.
it's also why we've given the book the subtitle that we have, which is, 5 practices to lead with awareness. So that's awareness of something not going right. You know what I mean?
And
Choice.
yourself.
What do I want to do about it? You know what I mean? What can I do? And then the last bit, which it takes courage to change, right? It takes courage to say, hey, I'd love to take a stand right now because I'm missing seeing your guys' faces. I wouldn't know you if I walked in. Can we just take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the thing is, and connect with each other as human beings? That takes courage.
Yeah.
We are not for a moment, as simple as these skills are, not for a moment do we underestimate the courage that it takes to actually take a stand for them. But we're hoping there's a whole host of people out there that are really wanting to do that because we think the world would be a better place.
Yeah, and you know what? And there's something to be said for making people a little uncomfortable. There's a lot of good things come from being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that is right.
I'm a big believer, in the work Kate and I do, that we do not grow from a place of comfort. You grow from a place of discomfort. That discomfort is telling you where I'm at today is not where I want to stay.
Mm,
And the only person that can help you move forward is you. We're a
Yeah.
big believer. My tenant in the way that I build out organizations is that you are self motivated to move and act on the world in ways that give you meaning.
mm.
And so, what meaning are you trying to create in that meeting with those people? Yes, you have an agenda, and yes, there's stuff to get through, but what meaning do you want to create for yourself? And if you create it for yourself, what can you create for others that might shift and move us forward out of our comfort zone in a way that is more connected to a world and a workplace that's better for all humans. Like, that's all we want. Come on,
Yeah,
people, we got a world to change. Let's go.
yes, and it does take courage, and I think it can start with the small things, but it's going to take courage in all levels of the organization, all facets.
Mm-hmm.
I had a
Yeah.
mentor that he had a quote. I still use it. He said to never award medals in times of peace.
Mm,
So if you want a medal, here's your time, man. This is this is where you can do it. Somebody's got to
yeah.
be the
Mm-hmm.
first one to charge that hill, and we need to do it for our people's sake because as an HR executive, my biggest focus right now is trying to find something that will continue to keep my people engaged, mentally mentally healthy, physically healthy, have a little levity in life, just something because we've dragged work to their homes now too,
Yeah.
and it's like we got to do something to keep it light, keep
Yeah.
them
The
healthy.
interest yeah, the interesting thing that's sort of catching my eye right now is the whole focus on engagement is shifting to a narrative around fulfillment, right? And so the art form for an organization is to understand business fulfillment and help individuals find the connection with their personal fulfillment. And I think this is one of the big resets that's going to happen inside organizations. We were starting to see trend line of this with this new entrance into the workforce because they watched the last recession that happened in 2008. They were old enough to remember that. They were looking for jobs that were less about career trajectory and more about personal fulfillment. And so they would be willing to take a job that had less significance to them because it was the means to an end. And that end happened to be not necessarily in the workplace. And then the pandemic hit for this new entrance into the workforce. And I am not at all surprised by the Great Recession because we gave people time to think about what matters to them.
Mm,
Many of the resignations are done because they're looking for the thing that gives them meaning. A lot of the research that's being done on that is showing that they don't actually know what that is, how to give voice to that meaning. They're searching for sort of an elusive unclaimed component, which is the third chapter of the book, which is claiming your value, right? How do I know what matters to me so that I know what I'm taking a stand for? And are you conscious of that? So much of our actions are part of what has been embedded into us by our environments and society. But there something like 85% of adults have never done the hard work of like owning and
mm.
claiming the values that they want to live their life by. And then every day living both not what they do, but how they're being. in alignment with those values.
Well,
And
we've
part of our
had
book
several
talks about that.
generations in a row that used a measuring stick for success that I don't think is going to be used much going forward. And I remember hearing the statement that this will be the first generation that might not do as well as their parents
Hmm.
since
In
industrial
that
revolution.
measure of success.
In that measure, right? Using that measuring stick, and what we might end up happening those they end up much more successful in fulfillment, quality of life, those
Yeah.
types of things. Because we
Yeah.
saw,
Meaning.
Yeah.
right, meaning. I saw my dad work 60 hours a week. His company didn't love him for it,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and he
Hmm.
missed a lot of things in return. I get to do a lot of things with my kids,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I'd take
So
that any
it,
day.
Yeah.
it's so
I
interesting that
think.
you say that, because I think that I have grandkids 11 and 9. They will remember this time, and they will be shaped. Their early adulthood will be shaped.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the defining event in that generation's shaping of their adulthood. And the impact to them for having their parents around them, maybe the good and the bad of that, time spent as a family because there was no going out and distractions,
Mm-hmm.
I think is going to shape that generation of our people in the world and in our workplaces in a way that I don't know that we've seen before.
I think the other thing that's really shifting is, and what we're seeing with the Great Resignation is that it's a relationship. And I don't know that employers have really seen their role in this being a relationship between the employee and and themselves. And I think that that's one of the things that has sort of tipped. Maybe they've taken it for granted. And what's happening is people are saying, no, no, we need to be in relationship. One of the big reasons a lot of people are leaving, according to one piece of research, was that at the very beginning of COVID, they were saying, we want more mental health. You're going to help us with dealing with all of this stress that is going on for us.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's followed through with it.
Yeah.
These companies haven't followed through with it. And so that's the thing that I'm pretty fascinated as I watch this happening in the workplace, because I think that baby boomers, what I mean? There were more of us than there were jobs, and we're starting to see that dynamic shift. And, Deb and I are always talking about, we don't really know how this is gonna, we don't know how this is gonna land, but it's pretty interesting to watch. There's some new things that are going to be emerging that organizations are going to need to do differently in order to meet people where they are.
I think there are two things, and so much of what we look at is both individual and systemic responses to each other, and they both move and change dynamically. They are not necessarily all in line, and it doesn't all happen neatly. And I think there are a lot of catalysts happening right now. So, for example, you mentioned earlier that people sit on and are often then represented in language inside organizations as liabilities. The cost of talent sits as a liability on a
Spreadsheet.
spreadsheet.
Yep.
And so when organizations, you and I for sure have been at those tables where the conversations are about the cost of our talent. And so advocating for training, development, mental health, those are things that are seen as additional costs. But what would happen if, and that is in my head an accounting, that is accounting, their costs, and they sit on an accounting spreadsheet. That should not shape the way you talk about your people. If you began to talk about your people as the greatest investment of
Mm-hmm.
your organization and how to amplify that investment, what would start to shift? Would you think about training differently as an investment? I get they might turn over. I get lifelong employment is over,
Mm-hmm.
but they also might stay. What if instead of tracking turnover, you started looking at tenure and started thinking about what if we doubled the tenure? I get different levels, different opportunities. What would the investment be to double your tenure? They're not going to stay forever, but what if they stayed twice as long? What would that stability provide to your organization and its ability to amplify the outcomes.
Yeah, you're changing the language. You're changing that North Star that pulls you towards it. I think that's a valid
So,
point.
so these are the things Kate and I spend our days looking at is how do we go in and agitate what is complacent and just sort of defaulted into, and no better time, people, than right now when everything is in a reset, the organization is in pain, people are in pain. So how do we bring folks together in a way of mutually benefiting both and thinking about this as a relationship? Maybe not forever, but boy, oh boy, let those people leave your organization and say, that's probably the best place I will ever have worked. Top it up, next employer. Let's like see what that relationship could be
Yeah,
like.
I saw that. One of the things you guys say is make it okay to leave. How are ex-employees spoken of? That's a bold statement because if you're saying make it okay to leave, that you say that to a CEO and he's going to look at me and go, "I'm sorry."
They're
Come,
Yeah,
gonna leave.
yeah.
They
They're
are
gonna
leaving.
leave.
I know
That's
they're going to
right.
leave.
Nobody comes and stays. So quit pretending like that's gonna happen.
It's a little bit like you
Just
were talking about your dad, right? I mean, you probably your dad and my dad were the same thing. They worked for the same company for a long time. That was a part of the agreement that they had with each other, and those days are gone.
Both of these ladies just about jumped through their screens at me. I would want you both. I want everyone to know that. I
because
felt
we have our screens on.
It's one of those things that people are gonna leave because they want to change. I mean, I came into my business career and I was like, I want four different careers. I've had four different careers. I'm
mm-hmm.
probably on my fifth or sixth.
I
You know,
started out as a preschool teacher.
That's right.
Wow.
It's one of those things that it is a really antiquated concept that we're going to hire this person and they're going to stay with us. And listen, I'm normally coaching on the other end of it when someone is thinking about leaving and they're humming and hawing and they feel so bad that they're going to leave the organization.
Oh, I
And I'm
know.
usually the one saying, do you think they're going to be sad about
Right.
letting you go if they have to? No, is the answer to that
No.
question.
Right.
We
We've
live in a
gone from
different
this.
world.
Yeah. So I don't know why a CEO thinks people will stay, right? We should begin that in relationship. What would that be like, right? Kate, how long would you like to be? What do you need to learn? What do you want to contribute? How do I help grow and evolve you so that at the end of the time with us, there are things that we can celebrate that you have contributed and helped move our big business forward. And if you tell me now it's time because you want to go to a different career, I change industries all the time because I got bored, right? I could do that same thing, but I wanted to do it in different industries and learn about those people and those business challenges. What would it be like if we just started our relationship that way? What would workforce planning look like?
Mm-hmm.
Succession planning. It changes the way we think about being in relationship. Can you tell my passion around this, people? Being in relationship with the humans that are part of our organization. We are treating them like people because also if our business needs change, we also have to change our agreement with them. So how do we respect that they will evolve, we will evolve, our organizations evolve, and there will come a time when we will say, it's time to move on. This is a pit stop in my career journey, not my destination. We know that. So quit pretending it's not that. Measure what matters. Focus on those things. Build to that and see what you get. It will be a different workplace, and
And
those
then
people will respond differently to you.
one of the things that we're so passionate about as well is on both sides, whether or not you're ready to say goodbye to somebody that's not working or you've sort of finished out a particular path forward with somebody, how do you not make it a character assassination? How do you not vilify them
Right.
for the fact that they want to leave and vice versa? I remember when I left, I started out in advertising. I worked at Ogilvy and Mather in New York City. And I remember I left and people are like, oh my God, where are you going? What are you going to do? And I just said, this job is so intense, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I just know that I need to leave and figure out what's next for me because I'm kind of done here. And I went around and thanked everyone that I wanted to thank at that organization that had contributed to my career there. I'd been there for 10 years.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
what about that? It doesn't have to be this, bad breakup, which
Right?
is
We
what
write about it like it's a bad emotional
I
breakup.
know.
and that's usually what happens, and there's a part of us that says, how do we support each other in being grateful for the contribution that someone made and also helping them move on to whatever is next and not make it some sort of character assassination that they've left us and therefore I
They were
have to
disloyal.
vilify them.
Yeah,
That's
they were
right.
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly
part of what
right.
we write about in the article is because people are watching you all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
That's true.
imagine what they are saying when they watch you, just this character assassination of somebody that sat at the table and was a key member of the team yesterday. What story are they telling inside themselves about what you're going to say about them,
I know. I've thought
right?
that before too. You're sitting
Come
there
on,
and
folks. We
Yeah.
can be better than this. We can
That's what
be
being
better than this.
that's what being a good human looks like.
oh, there it is. There it is. She knows how to put a period on it. So, guys, the book's coming out here in roughly 3 weeks, a little less than 3 weeks, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Just over
October
2.5.
26th.
And I think Kate shared with me, you guys have been you're like on the book tour now. You're doing a lot of podcasts and interviews. Is that part of it, getting the buzz out?
Here's a little bit of under the tent. We have been nothing but consciously incompetent on this, and we don't know how this works, but we are in the great hands of a marketing team that have choreographed, pretty much our moves. The HBR article kind of blew those plans out of the water last week because now all kinds of things are catching on fire. But right now it's really about really asking people to buy the book. That'll help, with just sort of getting the word out. And then the next year, it's really about us deepening our relationship and our engagement with the people who are really what we consider on the leading edge of what will be best in class. And today they're going to be unique in class. But
If you feel inspired to write a review on Amazon when you get it, and you can of course check out our website. We've got all sorts of goodies on there, podcasts and articles and newsletters and all that good stuff, which is www.humanityworks.com.
We're building the movement and the community that goes with it. So come along. We'd love to have you.
See, you guys are getting so good. You got so many sound bites. I mean, so many of these things could be pulled right out as you're getting so good at this.
That'll make our marketing team happy. The easy thing is we really believe it. So
we do.
It's sort of, I was like looking for my notes earlier and I'm like, I don't need those. Like, we know what we just speak from our heart, and hopefully it comes out in a way that resonates with folks. And
I usually write down 3 or 4 things that I just want to make sure I touch because I do my research. I always want to make sure I know people, and then I just count on the fact that interesting people are going to have interesting conversations. You guys are great. Nice. And I said, and I'll say it again because I saw you shared the article, the HBR, and I'm going to be able to say I knew you back when. Right.
That really made me giggle. That really made me so happy to read that.
You're like,
that
we're
was
gonna
very
like
sweet.
This.
Yeah,
we're gonna like this guy, and hey, we'll come back again.
That's awesome.
We'd love to come back.
To talk to you. I can't wait. You got another book probably, and just on the part about making it okay to leave, that's a book. Just that conversation. I mean, I saw you guys. Yeah. You still have plenty to say, and I think it's great.
Well, thank you.
So I'm going to put all the all the links for your website, the book, anything else that you guys want to do, any content that you want connected, the HBR article. I'll put it all in the show notes. Great. And I'm sure people are going to love this because you guys have some great content. You're obviously very passionate about it, and I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having us.
To spend time with you.
Yeah.
All right,
really
guys.
Grateful.
Well,
thank you.
Kate, I can't let you go without saying you handled that fly better than anybody. You had the most dedicated fly buzzing your tower the whole damn time.
What is that? It's October in Colorado. What is this fly doing in my space?
That was pretty entertaining to watch you. That was funny.
That's awesome.
See what happens when you turn your screens on.
That's right. That's right. All right, ladies. Best of luck to you. Godspeed.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to me today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Loved every minute.
Bye-bye.
Bye.